Hello and welcome to this most excellent edition of the King Street Cinema podcast. My name is Andee S. Preston Martin and I'm joined by James Theodore Rogan.
Oh, wow!
Yeah!
Was that just off the cuff?
Kinda, yeah. That's why it did come out very well. We'll be talking about the 1989 cult comedy classic Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, starring Keanu Reeves and George Carlin and Alex Winter. I've met Alex Winter, and I nearly said Bill Winters for some reason, which is
cool.
Yeah, so this is one I'm very excited about. It'll be shown at the cinema on 2 dates.
Yeah, the 28th, 29th?
Yeah, 28th and 29th
of this month, which is
June. And yes, we've not got to the stage yet where we're recording them 6 months before.
No.
And 2 nights on a Friday and Saturday. I'm very excited about this. It's the movie's 35th anniversary.
That's right. Yeah,
released in 1989. A lot to say about this movie. It's one we both grew up with.
Yes.
Can I just ask you, starting out, your first memories of this film?
Okay, long time ago, obviously, because we are talking. I did not see it at the cinema, but I definitely remember it being advertised and it being a thing that got to see that film. I remember it being like reviewed on TV shows and stuff. People talking about it, daytime kids TV. It was always being talked about. I saw it pretty early on VHS. Loved it. Obviously loved it. It was like one of my favourite films of that era, of that, me being that age, which would have been about, let's say 7, 8 years old. Yeah.
So you saw it straight away. Do you remember, because you'd seen the first one, the second one coming out, was that the big one? Because I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember the first one coming out, and I didn't get to see it. Mm-hmm. And then I rented the second one, or a friend did, and I went around and watched it. Right. And then rented the second one and literally saved my pocket money for a few weeks to buy the first one. I remember that clearly. It was in. They had copies of it in newsagents in the town I lived, little town I lived in, and it was £10. And I got £2 a week pocket money, and I saved up for 5 weeks.
Wow, very nice.
Yeah.
To get this film, Excellent Adventure.
Yeah,
brilliant.
And the first time I saw it, I'd seen the second one. I bought a video, and I remember walking home all happy from the shop with it in my hands, and a bigger kid was like, "What you got there?" I was like, "Say, what do we get that for?" And I was like, "Don't you like it?" He said, "Yeah, it's all right." I just remember he was almost like he was a big cartoon bully.
Yeah. And
he wanted to make fun of me for it, but he clearly liked it himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I thought, I'm glad that didn't end horribly tragically with it stealing it from you.
Oh no!
I thought you were going to.
I wouldn't have mentioned it. I'd just not done this podcast. I'd just been to do it. So you saw it. You'd have been younger than me when you saw it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess so. If you saw, so the second one, I remember going to the cinema to see Bogus Journey and being very excited about it.
Yeah, the second one, a lot bigger budget.
Much bigger budget. Overall not as good as this one, I'd say, but still great.
Yeah,
love Bogus Journey, but Excellent Adventure is the better film.
Yeah. So let's talk about how the film came about, because it was the creation of Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon. Is that right? Solomon. Yeah. I don't say Ed Sullivan.
Not Sullivan.
No. So who two writers, film comedy writers. There was a project of theirs in college, I believe, and they would do it like improv comedy in character.
The Bill and Ted kind of characters.
Yeah, they played them, developed it. And they do things like questions and answers in their almost stand-up set, weren't they? And basically wanted to develop a film about it. And I hear that originally Warner Brothers wanted to do the movie, and this would have been a few years before, because it was apparently all ready to go. And then Back to the Future came out. Yeah. And originally Bill and Ted drove back in a van.
That's true.
And they changed it, or wanted to change it to a phone booth. Yeah. Because different. And then they said, let's do that. Then pulled the plug. Script was all written. And then they basically went round to different studios, didn't they? Yeah. And was it Orion picked it?
Orion ended up picking up the distribution on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Orion went under. And then it didn't come out. Is that right?
No. Okay, Ryan was fine. Ryan was the distributor, but I'm forgetting the production company's name. A fairly famous one. It's really bad that I don't know it. Sorry for all you podcasts out there. I'm sure someone knows instantly.
Yeah, so
who was the production company that made the film? But it was a production company that made a fair few films in the 80s. I remember Evil Dead 2 was one of them. But it went solvent, so bankruptcy. And they were going to originally, help finance the distribution of the film, and then it was put in sort of like a space of not knowing what to do with it. So they had to shop it around. The filmmakers themselves had to shop it around to find someone that wanted to buy it, and to buy the distribution rights. And it was Orion who finally did it.
Because Orion
with not much of a distribution budget either. I think for a film, I suppose for a film this size, which I think was a 10 million budget. I think it was $1 million on sort of the marketing.
Because Ryan went under a few years later then, because it did. Now it's back. It was a small film, but I think word of mouth really helped it, because it ended up making. It's 10 million. It ended up making over 40 million.
Yeah, in the States. Yeah. So I don't know worldwide how much it made.
I don't know if it was that big over here. Maybe it got bigger later.
It probably wasn't so big. Like I say, I remember it being talked about on television quite a fair bit. Like I remember the scene before I saw the film. There is one scene, a clip that they showed on TV all the time, which is, and I'm guessing it's because the reason why they chose this particular clip is because it's quite actiony, but it's also coming out around the same time that Young Guns had just come out. The big kid bit in the bar where it all breaks out in a big fight and stuff. Yeah.
When they first meet Billy.
That scene was just shown constantly on TV as a kid promoting the movie, and I was going, "Oh wow, I really want to see that movie." So that's my definite first memories of Bill and Ted.
My first memories, it wasn't seeing the film, but I used to get buy a lot of Marvel and DC comics from the American comics, not the British ones, and there'll be ads for it in that, and I probably saw the ads while the film was out or before it came out. Then when it came out, I just sort of missed it, because when you're a kid, unless it's right in your face, you don't. There's lots of films what came out what are now cult classics. I always thought didn't get a cinema release as a kid, but I just missed it. Do you know what I mean? And when you saw the ads on TV, you might have been watching different TV shows than me, because I don't remember that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. No, I remember it very clearly. Saturday morning television mostly, and probably obviously ITV. See, I was a Going Live fan on BBC One, right?
So I might not have seen it.
I probably switched around the channels quite a lot. I mean, I watched a load of TV. TV was always on when I was a kid. So it's just something I just remember. I remember it very clearly. Now it may not have been advertising it for the cinema. It may very well have been about a video release. So I can't be certain about that. So it may, and of course, when it came out here anyway, I don't know how big the cinema release was, but it wouldn't have been at the same time as it was in America, which I think was early February was when it originally came out in the States, or in February. I'm not quite sure what time in the month, but that's when it came out in beginning of '89, and I'm sure it would have been here much later.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of films, especially the smaller ones, could be up to a year.
Yeah, it very well might have been about 1990.
Yeah.
But it was definitely before Bogus Journey was out. But Bogus Journey does feel, the second film, for all those that don't know, does feel like it was very soon after I'd seen this one, that it was out in the cinema. So it may very well have been...
Because when was the second one? 91?
91,
91, yeah. So, 2 years after the American release, but actually... It was filmed in '87, wasn't it? Because of all the trouble.
The first film, yeah. But and that's quite normal. So made in '87, they wanted to release it in the year coming. Couldn't obviously, because their first original choices were sort of put into a position of bankruptcy, and it still came out in February of '89. Which, I mean, if you're looking, which I'm sure they probably were looking for a summer '88 release. Because it definitely very much feels like a summer type film. It's not too far off, really.
No, it is.
But I suppose in movie terms, it's quite, 6 months is quite far, really.
Do you want to just quickly summarise the plot?
I'll try. Okay, so two guys, teenagers. Got to say late teens. I'd say probably at the end of their school. School seniors. I think they say the seniors anyway. But teenage guys. If they want to complete their year at school or school entirely, they have to graduate. Yes, this is the word. They have to. So they would be seniors then. Yeah. Have to get an A. Is it? I'm sure an A in their history report.
Yeah.
Now these guys are not the smartest of guys. No. So not necessarily unintelligent, but not very good when it comes to school.
They're too distracted by the likes of Van Halen.
Van Halen wanting to be in a band. They're aspiring musicians. That's what they want to do with their lives. So school, history, not really doing book reports, not really top of their agenda. But they want to complete the school because if they don't, then Ted's going to have to go off to military school.
Yeah.
And that means end of the band.
Yeah.
So gotta do that book report.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, a man named Rufus comes from the future and gives them that opportunity.
With a time
machine. So they can go back in time, collect famous people from history, and basically like a show and tell, show them to the rest of the class.
Yeah.
Or the rest of the school, if you like. It was meant to be originally just a classroom. Like the final scenes.
Yeah. They shot that as well.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. There are clips I've seen, stills even.
Yeah.
But so basically to the end of school. And hopefully if they do that well, then Ted doesn't have to go to military school and they can continue on. Now there is more of a story to it about set, in the future, about how important Bill and Ted are to humanity in general. But we can leave that to another day.
Okay, when we talk about the sequel, lots of little subplots as well with collecting all the people from history, and lots going on really.
It's a comedy. Must always be reminded of that we are talking comedy, quite broad as well. I'd say not sophisticated comedy.
No, there's lots of humour coming from them getting facts about history wrong.
Yeah, and saying the names wrong. And those kind of things, but very innocent and sweet.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very important part of the movie is that this isn't a mean film at all. The comedy in it is not in any way mean, even if some of the jokes may be a bit dated. Yeah. None of it is to really harm people or to poke fun so much at people, I'd say.
Yeah.
Other than perhaps maybe certain people from history, like Napoleon.
Yeah. But all this is something pointed out by I listened to the commentary on the Blu-ray last night, and something Alex Winter points out is Bill and Ted. They're not necessarily stupid, but they're very very childlike.
Yes.
And all the people they pick up in history are the same. Yes. Very childlike. And Napoleon, who they make him out to be a complete idiot. But he is like a happy little kid when he's excited and he has tantrums when he's in a bad mood. And I think the comedy in that really works.
I would say, absolutely true. It does. It works correctly. But I wouldn't say that's like unique to this film.
No.
Description of Napoleon. I think Napoleon often is seen from, like here, especially in Britain, as a kind of, at that kind of character. He's always portrayed as being really short, and when we think of really short people, we think of them as being sort of like,
even though he wasn't,
angry and stuff.
He wasn't that short.
No, exactly. That's what I mean. Like it's a fiction. We have this fictionalized idea of what Napoleon was like, and
but all the characters like that. Billy the Kid's excitable, and Socrates is
I would say, so Socrates, they call him Socrates, which is, is still funny. It's great. Yeah. I suppose the idea of someone like Socrates, Socrates, being able to see the future, is probably obviously someone we're talking thousands of years ago. Yeah. You would be. I mean, if you're from a real far history, Disney coming to a future, being able to see things that you just would not have even been able to conceive of your time, it would make you quite childlike.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and they all get along as well, which is nice.
Well, it's the spirit of the film, isn't it? The spirit of the film is that people get on with each other, and basically, no matter what your differences are, you seem to work through work things out. Now, it's done in a very, very simplistic way. There's no the challenges in the film of needing to finish this history report, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal, obviously, from our perspective, but in the sense of the film, it's like life or death kind of situation.
But that's the very teen movie thing about it. When you look at all teen movies, the plots really aren't anything that those characters 5 years later would care about.
Exactly, but of course within Bill and Ted, the thing that I alluded to but didn't really mention beyond is that it is vital, it is life and death that they complete this book report, because them not being together means the end of civilization in the future. But we don't understand that so much. We're just told that's the truth by our guide Rufus.
Yeah. Shall we talk about... First, just mention the director.
Yeah, okay.
Excuse me. It is Stephen Harrack. Harrack, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, probably.
Who...
Critters
in 1986.
Yeah. So previous film, I would have thought.
Yeah, which I believe was a straight-to-video.
Really?
The first one.
Oh, wow.
Cult comedy horror, excellent film if you're a fan of B movies and stuff like
Absolutely.
that. One of my favourites.
Critters is great.
Yeah, which is superb. And apparently they got him involved because they wanted someone, firstly, a good filmmaker who can work on a low budget, which Critters was.
Yeah.
And someone to make it a little bit more adult.
Yeah.
What they said in the commentary.
Interesting.
Because Critters is a 15 certificate R in America. But it is that, especially in the 80s, all the kids were watching it. It was almost like a bit more of a gritty Gremlins.
Yeah. I mean, the comparison to Gremlins is so typical, but they are very different.
Yeah, it's just little things.
They're just, monsters.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't really mean they're the same.
No, but it got compared a lot.
Yeah, it did.
But after Bill and Ted, he went on to do Mighty Ducks. The Emilio Estevez classic. The Three Musketeers Disney version with that was Kiefer Sutherland and Charlie Sheen. So he's sort of working with the Brat Pack a lot after the Brat Pack was a thing.
Making movies that are not necessarily the same as this one, but certainly in the same ballpark.
The closest would be Don't Tell Mum the Babysitter's Dead.
Yeah.
I'd say. And then 101 Dalmatians, that was a big hit.
And the 96 one, was that right?
Yeah.
It was in the 90s.
Yeah, with the one with Jeff Daniels and Glenn Close.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last sort of bigger film he done, also rock music related, was Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Yeah, loosely based on Judas Priest.
Right.
But they've changed all the names because they didn't want...
Yeah, for copyright.
Yeah, yes, save them some money. He weren't very good with getting rights because they really wanted Van Halen, didn't they, for this, and couldn't get the...
Well, I mean, I think it's a real shame that Van Halen didn't look at the script and go, oh, that sounds cool, we'll do it.
Well, I'm surprised that they weren't involved with the second one because of the first one being a hit.
Yeah, exactly.
And realised...
Yeah, they obviously
because that
loads of
happens...
money.
With Wayne's World, they wanted Aerosmith to be the Alice Cooper characters. You know what happened in the first one.
That's interesting.
They said no, but they'd already been on SNL as well with them, so they didn't want probably to associate with it. And then Wayne's World was a massive hit, and they come crawling for the sequel.
That's why they wanted him in the first one, because I think Alice Cooper's a much better choice.
Yeah, it kind of works because it's a solo artist as well.
Yeah.
So it's about him, and the whole Alice Cooper being posh.
Yeah.
You know, which he kind of is.
Yeah, exactly. It works when you hear him talking and stuff in interviews. He's very well spoken, and He's the perfect choice for making that kind of joke. I think.
Yeah. And while we're talking about cast, there are some musicians in this movie.
There are. There's quite a few.
There's more than I thought when I because you've got remember, is it the bass player from the Go-Go's was Joan of Arc, and then the Free is it on the council in the future?
Yes. So they go. So Bill and Ted, no spoilers here, but they go to the future and they very briefly meet some future people, and three of the future people, kind of like the leaders in the future, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
Kind of like in charge, and they're all not necessarily famous musicians, but they're all musicians that were at the time making music and continued on, I suppose.
Yeah.
We had the saxophone player from E Street Band, which is Springsteen's backup band, I suppose you could say.
Everyone knows him from the videos.
Dance in the Dark, the Smiley Man. You know.
It was years before I connected the two.
All right.
It was years before. And then
he was great. He's sadly no longer with us, but he was fantastic. Sadly, bad that I can't remember his name. I'm very awful with names. And then there was a guy from the Motels, which I think were lady from the Motels, who was they were a new wave band in Los Angeles, still going at the time. And do
you know the third?
Oh God, I know it's another new wavy band
from the Tubes.
The Tubes, yeah. Again, LA, yeah. New wave kind of glammy rocky kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that kind of works with this film because of the low budget. It's cult members. It's not like this big name to distract you.
Yeah.
If say it had been Springsteen on there.
Yeah.
That would have been in the promotion for the film,
well, of course.
And it would have taken a lot away.
Yeah.
From Bill and Ted, I think.
I agreed. I think with those three in that very brief scene. You get the sense that they are famous people, as in like they've been in bands. And if you're, especially if you're American, because these bands are sort of bigger in America than being American bands, I'm sure people would have looked at that and gone, "Oh, it's him or her from such and such," and that would have been a cool little thing, wouldn't it? Kind of Easter eggy type thing.
Yeah. And stick with the music side. The soundtrack was they didn't have the budget for big bands, but they got. Is an executive from Atlantic or somewhere to basically find up and coming smaller bands to write songs for the film.
Yeah.
And I love this soundtrack. Right. I was talking to you about it yesterday, wasn't I? Yeah. I prefer this to the second soundtrack, which is a lot of big names.
I agree that this has probably got better songs overall on it.
But it hasn't got Primus.
It hasn't got Primus, and Primus aren't in it, which they are in Bogus Journey, which is, for me, Primus is one of my favourite alt rock bands, so that's great.
Yeah. But out of those bands, the only band who really went on to do anything was Extreme.
Yeah, because they hadn't had a record out yet.
No, and it's Play With Me, which is on their first album.
Yes, it is. It's the last track on their
I don't know, but I think it might have been written for the film.
I think it might have as well. Yeah. Like I say, they hadn't had a record out yet. I'm sure they were probably in the process. Had a record deal, but I don't think they'd had their debut hadn't been out.
No.
So.
And the big song Two Heads Are Better Than One by a band called Power Tool, which is the Nelson brothers from the band Nelson. I haven't found anywhere to confirm this, but I'm sure I heard or read ages ago that it was because they changed the name of the band because Nelson had a kind of bad reputation for just being ballady, almost like a rocker equivalent of Michael Bolton, maybe. Yeah. I'm surprised they wanted to do that, but maybe they I don't know much about Nelson. Maybe they're full aware of this and just wanted a hard rocker sounding name for the band, and maybe they just went along with it.
Yeah, maybe.
But I do find it strange because even though they were ballady and they'd had big hits in America, you'd think putting their name on it would help sell it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Exactly. I don't know.
It could that could just be a lie. It could be some copyright reason why they had to use a different name.
Maybe.
Maybe they were contracted to someone else.
Well, this is it, right? Yeah. So if you're along the lines, just thinking of things in these terms, if you're contracted with another label, so on that label they own the rights to your name. Yeah. If the soundtrack for this film was on another label, they would contractually have to have another name.
Yeah.
If they were going to put music on.
But I can't think of any other cases like that. But
no, not in movies. No. But I've certainly know of musicians who've worked on other record labels while being signed to having a contract on another label, that wanting to release music on another label, having to do it with a pseudonym.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a fun fact there.
Yeah.
So we've sort of mentioned the cast, haven't we? I mean, we haven't really mentioned Bill and Ted. I mean, Keanu Reeves.
So Keanu Reeves is one of the most famous actors still working today. Sure.
Who?
Loves dogs. So
he's the man, isn't he? Yeah. But prior to this, he had done The River's Edge.
River's Edge, which is one of my favourite 80s teen movies. Absolutely love it.
I hadn't seen it till a few months ago. You recommended it, and very good.
Yeah.
He's a bit Ted-like in it.
He is.
It's a lot darker film.
It's a very, very, very different film. It's one of them movies where you see a lot of faces from the 80s in other teen movies, and you go, "Wow, this is a really dark movie for all these kids to be in." It's great.
He's great.
And it's got Dennis Hopper in it, so obviously
you love it. Another connection with Dennis Hopper. One of the writers one of the many writers who helped on the script of Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah,
one of the two. They haven't really mentioned it. They're mainly known for Bill and Ted, but then separately they've sort of co-written other things.
That's right.
I think it's almost like they're the person who will touch scripts up to help.
Yeah.
But quite a lot. They're worth looking up what else they've done anyway.
Absolutely. So Keanu Reeves, super famous. Everyone knows Keanu Reeves. Yeah. Alex Winter, maybe not so much.
Yeah, people would know him from The Lost Boys, even though he had very few lines in it. He was one of the Lost Boys.
Death Wish 3.
Death Wish 3 is banging. I don't care what you say. I saw that in a cinema with him in the crowd, and he didn't want to be there because he was ashamed by it. And
everyone loved it.
Edgar Wright, the director, got him in the cinema. And afterwards, he said, "You know what? It's not that bad. I really enjoyed it." But I think what he means is it is that bad, but he really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and everyone else had a great time.
Yeah, so it's a canon film. It's going to be good.
It's a canon film.
Yeah, but you could hear him and Edgar Wright just laughing very loudly.
Yeah,
and it wasn't putting on an act because it was a last minute thing. It wasn't a sold out show or anything. They were just there, and it was a surprise that Edgar Wright was there anyway. But he came from theatre, didn't he? Yeah. He'd been in like Peter Pan and things, and so been acting since he was very young.
And I think his parents are dancers. I think maybe so involved in entertainment business and stuff. So he's been around it all his life.
I'm not actually sure how old these two were when they were cast.
Mid-20s, I'd say. Yeah. Gotta be no older than 25.
Yeah, but they weren't like Jason Priestley playing a 40-year-old teenager.
No. They're definitely not teenagers, but they're in there young. But just before we move on from something to Alex Winter, we must talk briefly about Freaked.
Yes, the film that he co-wrote and did he co-direct as well?
Yeah, and starred in.
And started with a small role for
Keanu Reeves as a dog man.
Yeah, it's a brilliant film.
It's one of the greatest films of the 90s. I don't care what anyone says. It truly is a phenomenal, fun film. And other than this, it's definitely his best work.
Yeah, that's one that it's going back to memories from when you're younger. I can remember him being a guest on The Big Breakfast, the morning TV show. And I was probably late for school because I was watching it all. Yeah. And he was over talking and promoting that.
I remember, actually.
And that did come straight to video over here, but it had a big push for video, and I went out and rented it as soon as possible.
Yeah. Again, similar to my memories of Bill and Ted's Adventures, seeing a lot of it clips on daytime TV, sort of almost aimed at kids, which is like, hang on, this isn't a kids movie.
Yeah,
but
not saying much about Keanu Reeves, but I will stand by this is my favourite and I think best franchise he's been in. I don't care what anyone says, because
probably
because everyone loves John Wick. I think it's okay. To be honest. And Matrix.
I got bored of John Wick after the second one. I thought that's enough.
Yeah. Matrix. The first one's really good.
Yeah. Again, not so great sequels. Some people rate them more highly than but I mean, whatever. Yeah. It is what it is. Yeah. Matrix, the original film, is a classic example of late 90s cinema. After that, whatever. No. And I agree. Whenever I think of Keanu Reeves, I always think of Ted. And obviously we are the generation of that. And I think that would be the case for everyone of our generation when I'm pretty sure would think more. Unless you've got massive, Matrix fans where they think that's the greatest film of all time, then obviously you'll
I think people slightly younger than us would say they know him from the Matrix. People younger than that would say John Wick.
John Wick, absolutely.
And people who are about 2 years younger would probably say Speed.
I was going to mention Speed again.
I don't count that as a franchise because he wasn't in the second one.
Not in the second one, absolutely, or anything else to do with it. But of course, again, one of the greatest films of all time. It has Dennis Hopper in it.
Interestingly, though, he didn't do Speed 2, but he did do another movie with Sandra Bullock, the Lake House. Is that what it's called?
Right. I don't know that one.
Yeah. It's like a romance type one he done with Sandra Bullock.
I don't know that movie.
And there is talk of a Speed 3 or them two doing something together again. I just read an interview recently.
I mean, wouldn't be the worst idea.
Yeah. But they've already made Speed 3 on Father Ted, but proper Speed. When they do it though, if they do it, there'll be all the jokes of them with a Zimmer frame going.
I mean, well, they're both looking good. I think they're both capable of still kicking ass and all that.
They can't. I mean, Chuck Norris has got a film coming out. He's a legend. Right, so getting back to this film.
Yeah.
It spawned the sequel, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
It was only a few years ago the third one came out, Face the Music.
Sure.
Which I quite liked.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was
fine.
And they sort of passed on the gauntlet onto their
Absolutely.
daughters.
It's very much an updated, version of this film, I'd say. It's very much a 21st century version of the movie, which is fine. It's going to be different. It's not going to be this film.
It is one of those films that people didn't rave about when it came out, but I didn't hear anyone complain about it really. Do you know what I mean? Often when years later they see everyone moans, childhood ruined and all that nonsense.
I'm sure there was probably a bit of that, but mostly drowned out, I'm sure, by people just very happy to see Bill and Ted back on.
It kind of goes against the party on and be excellent to each other if one moans about it,
exactly.
doesn't
it? Just thinking of I think talking about the spirit of the film and the characters in general, why it works so well, because you could see this not being so well remembered or it not being favoured so much, because just on paper it sounds like a lot of other movies of that time, and it was. There were a lot of movies similar to this kind of story, and the reviews reflected that at the time. A lot of reviews didn't. You were like, whatever, it's just another one of them. Yeah. But the reason why this works so well is because the characters are wonderful to each other.
Yeah.
They work so well together. You can see that they, as people, like each other.
Yeah, and they do.
And they do.
I was going to say did, but they do. They're still friends.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how the third movie got made.
Yeah.
Because the second one, big budget, it didn't do as well as they thought, and that's one of the reasons it took so long to make another one. And also, I kind of think that if Keanu Reeves didn't go off to be such a big star, because him and Alex Winter basically were fighting for the third one to get made, I don't think there'd ever been a third.
No, probably more than likely not.
Yeah, but they're clearly mates. They want to work together, and they're so good at Bill and Ted, because it's almost like Bill and Ted are like one person. And very important point to make is that they are a cohesive unit ultimately, because and that's important in this film, because it shows a sort of camaraderie and stuff, which I'm sure a lot of people at the time, young kids watching the movie, would have had friendships that were like that, where they felt inseparable to one another. Very important. There's I think only one scene there's not many scenes in the movie where they're not together, and one of them was when they're in the mall with the all the famous people from history, and it's just Bill, and the only reason he's on his own was because Keanu Reeves was ill when they were doing that, and the shooting schedule, they kind of just had to do it. So mostly they were all together. Have you seen, this just reminds me, the 80s movie Strange Brew with Rick Moranis? There's a scene, because it's two brothers, and there's a scene in that where they're much like Bill and Ted, but it's not as childlike.
No,
they're brothers who are angry with each other, but they love each other.
Yeah.
But there's a scene where they have to separate, and Rick Moranis character starts crying because they've never been apart.
That's right. Yeah.
I love that joke because it's very.
Yeah.
But yeah, just thought I'd mention that, and everyone should watch that movie.
Absolutely, that's a fantastically fun film.
Yeah.
Canadian, so obviously good. But yeah, so they make a joke of that in the third film in Bill and Ted, what was it called again?
Face the Music.
That's right, Face the Music, the third one. They make a running joke, I think, even throughout the film, which is funny, really funny, about how they can't even conceive of the idea of being separate from each other.
There's
it just doesn't compute with them.
One of my favourite scenes in that movie is when they go to marriage guidance together,
when it's meant to be about their significant other, but their significant other is Bill and Ted. It's really, that scene's brilliant. It's really funny.
But I'm assuming that the two writers are very close as well, and therefore it works, and they can bounce off each other and do. I mentioned Strange Brew. I think if there's influencers for this movie, there's a lot of teen teen movies of the time, it was slightly influenced for, almost trying to fit in with.
Yeah.
And then there's sci-fi stuff that influenced it.
Yeah.
Strange Brew would be, but it went on to influence more, I'd say, and a lot came out of it because we had, I think, even though Mike Myers denies it, it definitely influenced Wayne's World.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Like you say, he denies it. We obviously look at that from our perspective. It seems clear to us that it is influence.
Yeah.
But you know,
you can be influenced by things without being aware of it.
Yeah, sure.
So
absolutely,
maybe,
yeah.
and plot-wise, they're different, and
very different.
And Wayne and Garth are more. Wayne wants to be in charge, even though, whereas they're.
Wayne's World is about Wayne. You know, it isn't Wayne and Garth, even though they try to make it out like in a way it is.
Maybe it was pushed more to be a bit like a Bill and Ted. You know, when it came out. Yeah. But they are two series of films that people always bunch together.
Sure, of course.
Because of the two friends both loving the rock music.
And I suppose the way they're vernacular, the way they speak is quite similar, even though they're from very different places. Bill and Ted are meant to be from California. So supposedly, I guess originally were supposed to be kind of like surfery dude type characters, stoners, which they're not. In the film, but have that kind of maybe similar way of speaking, Valley as well, San Fernando Valley kind of way of speaking.
Kind of influenced by like Sean Penn in
exactly.
Fast Times. But there's something that Alex Winter seems very proud of, the fact that there's no drugs references. No. They're not stoners. They're just these innocent, fun-loving.
Absolutely. These are all of the reasons why the film works.
Yeah.
Because if you had all those things, which I think were originally in there, but the writers originally had the characters like that, being stoners.
Yeah.
If you had that in the film, it wouldn't be.
It wouldn't have stood out.
No, absolutely not.
And they wouldn't be as likable.
No.
Because they're likable because they're just these fun-loving guys. Mm-hmm. And there's there's one reference in it to them drinking.
Yeah.
When they go to the bar.
And they say, "Oh, we didn't even get ID'd. You've got to remember this place."
Yeah. And then there's the only rude joke really is their favourite number.
Yeah.
Which is funny and it goes over kids' heads. That joke.
Sure, absolutely. I remember not knowing what they meant at the time.
Yeah.
And then finding out later on, go, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I believe it's still a PG.
Yeah, I think so.
The last version of it, because I've got a few copies of it. the last version of it I got is PG, and there's just a little thing flash up before it starts saying of its time a few things.
Yeah, because there are a couple of phrases in the film that are probably like you don't usually get used now, especially in a jokey sense, I suppose.
Yeah. But it's all. I think it's all innocent, and it's just time and language changes.
Yeah,
and they've acknowledged that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's good.
Yeah.
It went on to be. There was 2 sequels, loads of comic books, toys, the works. A cartoon series, which is memorable theme tune, which always helps from the 80s. It ran for 2 seasons, quite a few episodes. I imagine, I haven't looked that up, but quite often with these, there'd be a lot of episodes.
Yeah, I'd say at least 30.
Yeah, and the first season you had Alex Winter, Keanu Reeves, and George Carling, who we haven't even mentioned yet, really, doing the voices. Yeah. And then there was a live action series as well, which we probably shouldn't go on about because
not remembered favourably.
But the cast from that done the voice in the second series.
Yeah.
YouTube is the way to find these shows. I recommend the animated series.
I don't believe that the animated series is on YouTube, though clips probably are, and the theme, the intro, which is great.
Badass.
Yeah. But if you are interested in seeing the awful live action TV show, that is all on YouTube.
Yeah, luckily there's not many episodes.
No, there's only 7, I think.
Yeah, and only 6 were aired.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't bode well.
No. It's set a few years later and they work in a shop, don't they?
They do have a job. I forget why. There is plot to explain why they have this job instead of obviously being in a band. Yeah. Oh, that's right. No, they need to get money to get an amp.
Okay. That's weird. The first job I ever got when I was like 15, 16 was working in a coffee shop to earn money to go to Ozfest to see Ozzy Osbourne and loads of bands. And I stayed in that job for 12 years. Yeah. So it's very Bill and Ted of me.
Yeah, indeed. I was going to say, are you not Bill and Ted? Which one are you?
They are one.
That's very true.
So,
so people would mix them up often.
Yeah.
So just mentioning that again, I suppose that Bill and Ted are in a lot of ways one kind of character, and people would just chop and change which one was called Bill, which one was called Ted, and I think they even did it themselves.
They did, yeah. They were
forget who was who.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people auditioned for this. Nothing to look on YouTube. One of the videos you can see is it's Alex Winter with Paulie Shaw.
Yeah,
and I like Paulie Shaw. He's probably not the nicest of people, but for that era, I think he made some, for their time, enjoyable comedies.
Yeah.
But it would not have worked with him.
No.
Corey Feldman was another one up for
really?
it, I believe. There's a lot of people, but these two gelled so well.
It's interesting. Ted was Keanu Reeves. I think they thought him really early on. Were like, right, this is definitely our Ted.
Yeah.
And then just sort of like looked around to see, as you do with these kind of things, who would fit with him, and also if there is anyone that would better fit with another person, maybe. So even though they had him in mind from early on, they still looked at lots of people, and I think one of them was Brendan Fraser as well for Ted, which would have been really interesting with Brendan Fraser playing Ted, Paulie Shaw who went up for Bill.
Yeah, because they later done Encino Man.
Yeah, and then they ended up doing
I think there is a connection. I don't know if it's one of the writers or maybe a producer or something, because I seem to remember when that came out in this country, it's called California Man. The words Bill and Ted were on the advertising,
right?
So I don't know if there's some connection.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I not that I know of, other than I suppose the kind of feeling of the movie is quite similar.
I'm sure it might have said from the makers of.
Really?
So it might have been
maybe the producers.
Yeah,
because I don't. The writers certainly not,
okay.
and the directors didn't.
No, it's not.
So it's probably
something. Yeah,
producer.
Yeah. Or it might have just been one of the misleading ones for fans of.
Yeah. Did you enjoy Bill and Ted? Yes. Well, you probably like this too.
Yeah. Have you seen there's a recent interview of Adam Sandler, and he's talking with Brendan Fraser, and they're talking about Airheads, which is another film I think is influenced by this.
Absolutely.
And he said that Paulie Shaw was actively trying to get influence them not to cast Brendan Fraser in that, because he had it in his head that it would put off doing Encino Man 2.
Okay.
And it's like there's this interview, and he's
That's
like,
awful.
What? Yeah, and Adam Sandler has no reason to make that up. He's not like he's jealous of Paulie Shaw's career, is it?
So what? Paulie Shaw told Adam Sandler this?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it's. But I think he was probably a bit messed up.
Definitely. I mean, clearly to say something like that, because that's just a really dumb thing to say in any context. Really.
Yeah, and Sandler sort of laughing about it in his interview. Right? You know that guy who's annoying Richard Simmons at the moment because he wants to make a film about him. God.
Ugh.
Just because it says on the internet, he looks. I'll try to go off and just explain this to people.
Yeah, go on.
A lot of people online have said that Paulie Shaw looks like Richard Simmons, the 80s keep fit guy, and that he should play him in a biopic. So Paulie Shaw has made a short film where he plays him. He was trying to get permission from Richard Simmons, who's a bit of a recluse now, and he made the short film without any permission. And then Richard Simmons is like, "No, I don't give you permission to do this. Can you cease, please?"
Yeah.
And then Paulie Shaw's all upset, and he calling him his brother. And why are you doing this to me? I could win an Oscar.
Oh, God.
And the short film is all right. But it is just Paulie Shaw pretending he's not like a great performer.
He's doing one of his parodies basically,
and Stretch Buddy. It's like I feel a bit sorry for him.
I mean I do as well, and I don't even like him. So.
You don't like Biodome? Oh yeah, that's not very good.
That one's awful.
Apparently it's a change, but that was from an original script for Bill and Ted 3, and they changed it.
Right, amazing.
Yeah.
The only thing in what was it, Biodome?
Yeah,
there's Tenacious D are in it.
They are,
and I mean people like Tenacious D.
And him from the Ghostbusters, who shuts them down. He's in it, isn't he?
He's in it. Yeah. What's that other film he's in? He's in
Mallrats. No, he was meant to be Mallrats, and he wouldn't do it, and then they got into.
No, he's in another movie where he plays a nicer character, and you never look at him and go, "It's him from Ghostbusters." Oh,
I've probably seen it in Day.
I've completely it's gone from my mind, but that's there. Anyway,
George Carlin plays Rufus, who one of the most Is I use the word influential again, or one of critically acclaimed? I don't know, comedians, stand-ups of all time.
Certainly, he's one of the most famous and most respected stand-up comedians of all time.
Of all time. I first heard of him because of this movie, because of my age.
Yeah, me too.
The first ever presenter of Saturday Night Live in America.
Indeed.
Yeah.
The opening of the show.
Yeah. And when it came to Rufus, he was cast really late. They'd started shooting before he's confirmed.
Yeah.
Actors considered Martin Sheen and Sean Connery.
Love it. Would have been absolutely ridiculous, either of them. I mean, what were people thinking?
Yeah.
Was even Ringo Starr as well?
Yeah. What if it was Dennis Hopper?
Well, obviously. Do you know though? I have thought of that in the past. Like, if where would Dennis Hopper go in this movie? And it would be being Rufus. It wouldn't have worked as well. But I still
as Socrates.
Or maybe Genghis Khan.
He could have done in a very small cameo. He could have been the teacher in the school.
Yeah, that's what he often does. He often plays a stonery teacher, like a hippie teacher. That's kind of like his thing. He could do that. In a small role.
Yeah. So they didn't know that he'd been cast, and they were shooting the, I think it was the Wild West scene when it was. So they'd already started the movie, and then. And apparently they were both very pleased that it was someone they admired.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's not in it very much, so you've got to remember that. But he is very memorable. He kicks the film off. He's the first person we see. He is, in a way, without being a narrator, he is the storyteller. Yeah, you'd say. Yeah. So he's important, even if he's not in it much.
Yeah, and
memorable.
And he's not really an actor, so he kind of works.
He's done a few things.
Yeah, I mean, he was in the producer got him cast. I believe Outrageous Fortune.
Yeah, with Shelley Long, right?
Yeah, I remember. Right? Yeah, I think it is. I remember the title, and I think I've seen it as an 80s comedy.
Yeah,
and
definitely Bette Midler.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I think it is those two. Right. I'm not going to look it up because I'm tired of cheating. Yeah. So, and then the only other films I really remember from since were he worked with Kevin Smith a few times. Yeah. He was in Dogma and Jersey Girl. Yeah. But he essentially was a stand-up.
Absolutely, that's his career as a stand-up comedian.
But he's always one of those faces that when he pops up in film, it's like, it's George Carlin, or it's Rufus. Yeah. And I'd say definitely outside of the stand-up community, this is what he's most well known for.
I would have thought so.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no longer with us.
No, he's been gone quite a while now. Actually.
Yeah, and in the third one, they have his daughter. Well, the character's daughter's in it.
Right.
And you don't see a hologram of him or something, I believe.
You might be right. Yeah. I have seen it, but it was just the once. And even though I did enjoy it, it's like many films that I knew. My memory just doesn't. I just don't remember them so well. Yeah.
But it's also when we were younger, something like Bill and Ted would have on video, and we wouldn't have had many videos.
Absolutely, I've seen Bill and Ted countless times. Seriously, both. And I think I'd probably X Adventure more, but both of them, that and Bogus Journey, so many times.
So will this be the first time you've seen this one on the big screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So cool.
Pretty sure that's right.
Yeah. One thing we're going to mention as well. There's a bit of a myth at the end of the movie when Rufus plays guitar.
Yeah.
And everyone, even online, they say Steve Vai.
Everyone thinks it's Steve Vai, and they'd be absolutely fine and right to think so. He was kicking around at that time. He was well known, but he wasn't like super duper uber famous that they probably could have got him. For a fair price.
Even on the commentary, Alex Winter says to the producer, "Was it Steve Vai?"
Yeah,
because I think Steve Vai was something. It's weird. I don't know if it was something to do with the movie because there's a.
This is what he did a load of music for the second film.
Yeah, that's because he done the Reaper rap guitar solo.
Yeah. But loads of incidental music. He did loads of music in Bogus Journey.
On the Blu-ray, the first movie, there's an interview with him, and he just talked about his career.
Right, that's
weird. But it was. Weird. Do you know who did the solo?
Stevie Salas.
Yeah, you've researched. Well done. So that. Who's a solo guitarist who still performs and had loads of albums.
Yeah, but I think had not released anything again. At this point, so had not had I think a debut album came out like the year after or something like that. So again, probably did it for very little, but obviously a virtuoso, plays the guitar like Van Halen.
and it's with the Van Halen thing as well. It's so sad because Eddie Van Halen was going to be in the third movie. It was all sorted, and then he passed away, and they got someone else in who I think ruined the film with one. Dave Grohl was in the.
I know who you mean.
People like him. That's good.
It's whatever.
Yeah, that was sad. So, what else have we got? I'll give you the ratings on this film.
Oh yeah,
because
do that.
It's a cult movie, really. Even though it's gone, there's lots of offshoots from it, but it's no Star Wars or anything like that.
No.
So on Letterboxd, it's got 3.6 out of 5,
which is an average score. Slightly above average, but still,
on Rotten Tomatoes, 82%.
Yeah, so high, but not like that's like one of the best films ever.
Not Shawshank.
Not Shawshank.
And another average score, but I love this. On IMDb, it's 6.9.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously. Obviously, it's 6.9.
That's very did you know that?
I did, actually.
Yeah, it's one of those, there was a meme about it a while ago. Now I checked it still is that.
Yeah,
so that's
cool.
Cool.
I checked yesterday and it's still 6.9.
Yeah. That's brilliant. And if you look at my letterbox, it's got 4.5.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. I mean, that's fine. No, I mean, it's a 4 for certain. I mean, I can imagine people loving it so much for a 5. In a nostalgic sense, of course, it is a 5. Yeah. I mean, from that period of time before you understood movies really, and you just love them for the sake of loving them. That's one of the films I said to you the other day that this is without question in my top 10 films for just making me happy.
Yeah.
You just put it on and you're like, lovely. Yeah. You can't be unhappy with this film.
No. I will add as well that for a couple of years on my Letterboxd, it was a 4 from me. Right. And then I saw it on the big screen.
There we go.
I'll be seeing it on the big screen again. I'm going to go on the Friday.
Yes.
And I've got a mate who says he's doing both.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
Anything else to add about Bill and Ted?
I mean, yeah, absolutely, loads. But, we don't want it to run on too long, do we?
No.
Yeah.
Anything major? No.
I think we've covered most of what I think. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any other little surprises in the film that might be interesting for a podcast.
Well, there is. The two writers who were the original Bill and Ted on stage are in the movie. They go to the ice cream place. Ted's younger brother, who's been made to look after Napoleon, take him to get some ice cream. And two of the ice cream salesmen or whatever, waiters. Yeah. I mean, it's a very strange place. It's the kind of place we wouldn't have here in Britain. Yeah. It's a sort of very American-y kind of ice cream restaurant. Yeah. Two really annoying people who give the ice cream are the writers of the film. And it's very short. But one thing I'll just finish on is that we haven't mentioned, there's so many other, we've mentioned the people from history, or some of them. There's so many other little great characters in this. The brother's funny. The brother's cool.
Yeah.
You got Missy.
Yes.
You got the two parents.
Yes.
The teachers. There's a lot of...
These are all small parts that are important, that make the film and the plot of the film and just everything, the running of the film, work. It all works because none of them are bad. Yeah. All of them do their jobs well. That is something as well. Yeah.
Apart from the dad and the teachers who mean well, they think they're doing good for Bill and Ted by being strict. Yeah. There's not really a villain in the film. There isn't a villain in the film.
No, not at all. And again, it's another thing why I think the film works as well as it does, is because it's not got that typical trope to it where there's some 80s nasty corporate capitalist villain.
Yeah, exactly. In a suit. Wearing a suit. Okay, we've spoke for ages. We should really wrap it up now.
Yeah.
We'll get another podcast with you soon. I'm not sure what film we're going to do next.
All right.
But do check the socials.
Yeah.
The Instagram.
Yeah.
The Facebook. Is it on anything else? I think I might have made a mistake before and said it was on X. I don't know if it is.
I'm not. Do you know what? I'm not totally sure. So I'm going to say no. But it may very well be.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Facebook and Instagram.
those are the two main ones.
The King Street Cinema and the website.
Of course,
Google the website is up updated regularly. If you've done it, you book your tickets through there, obviously. Yeah. Get on that. I didn't even introduce us properly at the beginning of the show. I'm Andy. I do other podcasts sometimes and have done radio stuff. And you are James, who works at King Street Cinema. You're the projectionist.
I am.
Yeah.
An all-round sort of technical guy.
Yeah, the man. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you all very much for listening. If you're listening on the Spotify, please follow us, like us, whatever it does, rate us, share with your friends, and you can, if you've got any questions to ask about this podcast or anything to say, if we made anything wrong, you can.
Which I'm sure we have. I'm sure there's been a couple of blunders.
You can, like me nearly getting Alex Winter's name wrong. You can message the podcast through Spotify. Anything for the cinema as well. If you have any questions, we can answer it on. You can answer it on the show.
Anyone got any suggestions for anything that we should show in the future?
That's good. Yeah. So thank you very much, and party on and be excellent to each other.
Bye bye.